Hello everyone. The topic for today I have taken is madness in literature. Myself, Dr. Achal Mundafale. Um, Let us look at this concept, that is the madness in literature. Now, madness is a clinical condition. As you can see on the slide, it is a clinical condition. Simply put, it is an imbalance of mind, an extreme sense of perception and action. Madness is the one aspect of man's nature, and it may emerge only in extreme or extraordinary circumstances. Madness is thus nothing but literary motive as well as something as the nature of madness. The medieval mystery plays and Shakespeare's As You Like It created dramatic illusion. In the postmodern sense, the same was called presence absence syndrome, based on succession of intensity. Depiction of madness in 19th century literature in England and America was paralleled with the scientific discoveries. In 18th century, madness was viewed as evil, that is the black blood. It was the era of overindulgence of imagination. Lillian Fader, in his Madness in Literature, shows how literary interpretations of madness, as well as madness itself, reflects the very cultural assumptions, values, and prohibitions that they challenge. The next is that there is no proof of single cause for madness. The causes may be biological, psychological, and environmental. Now, madness is a mental condition in which a person cannot distinguish fantasy from reality. According to Freud, the personal madness serves as inspirational insight to escape from painful reality. We move on to the next slide. Now, what appears here is the problem of hyperreality or aesthetic illusion, that is, the inability of consciousness to distinguish real from the unreal. Aesthetic illusion is a type of mental absorption which describes a generally pleasurable cognitive state that is frequently triggered by various media or other artifacts. The recipients can be drawn into a represented world imaginatively, emotionally, or to some extent rationally and experience the world, the characters, and the story in a lifelike way. According to Freud, an individual turns from reality because he cannot come to terms with the demands of renunciation of instinctual desires, while the fantasy life allows full play to his erotic and ambitious wishes. The mental distortions enable them to bridge the gaps between the dream world of imagination and the drab world of reality. The dream world becomes more real for them and never takes them out of the fantasies, and so the actual reality becomes difficult for them to accept. They dream because it feeds their fantasy, and dreaming becomes an escape from reality and fulfillment of unsatisfied wishes. Failing to make a transition from one world to another, they oscillate between fear and fantasy, and this inner sentimental violence turns them into a neurotic. The sentimental violence which arises because of excess of expectation from one's life and failing to attain it. This isolation and emotional starvation starts the process of psychological disintegration. So, thus, we have seen the presence absence syndrome, the problem of hyperreality or the aesthetic illusion, the instinctual desires, the escape from reality into the world of fantasy. And now we come down to the conscious and subconscious. The conscious and subconscious. It makes sense. Whatever one can and does accept on a conscious level has to be accepted by his subconscious as well. That is, the subconscious mind is subject to the conscious mind, and one can train his subconscious mind to believe what he can accept on a conscious level. Mysticism is the belief that sometimes outside you or sometimes outside one controls his life. Recognizing that one is in control and can rely upon his subconscious mind for the answers one seeks, what one seeks is empowering. Murphy suggests that science means knowledge that is coordinated, arranged, and systematized so that we can cooperate with our subconscious minds. That is to say, that the subconscious work minds work as fantastic tools to help us achieve ends that we desire to see in our lives. But what stands true here is the fact that we need to present positive thoughts and images to our subconscious minds as we can't force things. Next, we come down what happens is that the because of the fight of this conscious and the subconscious mind, what happens is that the individual is in a trauma, and this inner void and isolation and emotional starvation starts the process of that individual's psychological disintegration. Now, next we come down to the madness in literature. Now, madness, it sounds wild and romantic. Even we can say primal and primitive, it has a primal and primitive closeness to the essential truths of the universe. In literary history, it translates to something more transcendental. Even writers themselves subscribe to the idea. Byron's "We of the craft are crazy" and Woolf's pronouncement that madness is terrific. Madness in literature can refer to both writers who are known to have been insane and to abnormal characters in literature. Thus, there are two major definitions of madness in literature, namely the mad writer and the mad characters. The idea of the mad writer. The idea of the mad writer, introduced by classical writers like Plato, says that these writers' creativity is the result of some irrational, unmanageable, and overwhelming forces. Yet the artists are considered interesting and appealing because their madness, according to studies conducted in the 20th century, reveals that schizophrenia, paranoia, depression, and addiction can be involved in the creative process. Writers such as Lucretius, Nathaniel Lee, Ezra Pound, Jonathan Swift, Virginia Woolf were known to suffer from mental problems, yet some of their best works were those created in moments of depression. The next direction of literary madness concerns characters with mad behavior. Generally, writers attribute some strange traits to their characters, either as a plot device or to generate interest in the character. Many writers are interested in exploring human behavior, contradictions, inner anxiety, and pathological actions. Mad characters can become mad during the course of the work's narrative, as in the case of Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth and King Lear. There are also characters who show normal societal behavior and norms, who may not become mad but choose to act as if they were. These include Edgar in King Lear and McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The third approach used to explain madness in literature contains psychological terms. Psychological terms whose definitions are applied to literature. Psychology and literature complement each other as both disciplines deal with understanding of personality. The psychological approach has become the main criticism method since Sigmund Freud. Apart from using the Freudian approach, psychological criticism also relies on third force psychology, which offers an alternative approach to psychoanalysis and behaviorism. The sociological madness. The sociological madness depicts characters estranged from society, sane, normal, or rational behaviors like Melville's Batloi or Camus's Massault in The Stranger. Frequently, a writer utilizes this literary madness to satirize the society which has produced the mad individual. A mad person in the Shakespearean wise fool. Reason and truth tradition can also utter truths that most people of a supposedly sane society would never observe or verbalize. The mad characters can take more active steps as rebels or nonconformists to oppose society's constraints. Writers portray these characters as existing outside of the mainstream, either by choice, necessity, force, or illness. Such mad characters portray how society's dominant cultural values are often irreconcilable with the characters' lives and convictions. Personality disorders appear to be either widespread or widely discussed. In fact, what Freud points out is that the madness that this personal madness serves as inspirational insight to escape from the painful reality to these characters. At the end, writers who deal with madness as a general theme reflect a deep awareness of human personality. As such, this Dionysian element in literature seems more sympathetic to mad, disturbed, or agitated individuals than other literary works, but it also demonstrates that the mad person is often not so very different from you or me, and in fact, illness itself is often an attempt at a cure. All clinical literature on madness merely reinforces that there is still much we don't know about mental disorders. The literary attitudes toward madness often reflect a greater awareness and understanding, as well as sympathy for the realities of the human mind, than do historical medical attitudes, thereby contributing significantly to the attempt of unraveling mysteries of personality. Thank you.